1Huddle is amazing. Learners will gain knowledge faster, be more engaged, be happier using 1Huddle over traditional video-based learning content.
We always get asked, does 1Huddle work? So we put it to the test. Video learning or 1Huddle? At the University of South Florida's Luma College of Business, Vinnick Sport and Entertainment Management Program conducted a formal research study on the effectiveness of 1Huddle versus traditional video-based learning. I caught up with the research team from the University of South Florida so they can better explain what their findings were. Check it out.
Thank you, Sam, for letting the research team give you a little bit of a synopsis on the research that we did. This was a super exciting opportunity for University of South Florida to work with 1Huddle to kind of examine how 1Huddle is amazing. So how did we get here? Sam and I have been talking a long time about, how can we showcase 1Huddle's strengths and see how it would compare against traditional learning management. And what we ended up doing was, I know that 1Huddle did a little bit of research, and then we did some of our own data analytics, looking back of house to see how we could test the previous thoughts that we had and conclusions on how 1Huddle differed from traditional. So we compared two just-in-time learning, gamification, and video-based learning to see which one would be more effective, more engaging, and see how 1Huddle stacked up against traditional learning systems. So when you look at it, we kind of looked at three overarching questions, right? How does 1Huddle compare on learning engagement, time spent learning, and overall knowledge retention? And looking to see how was it better, worse, the same in comparison to video-based learning. What we did was we had two samples divided equally, a sample of about 633. One group did the 1Huddle training and one group did a video-based learning. And when we did this video-based learning, it was a general topic looking at unconscious bias in the workplace. And the 1Huddle group were able to play the game, and then the video-based learning they watched a video, and both groups were tested on their knowledge, tested on how much they enjoyed it, which we'll get to that in a minute in more detail. But one thing you'll notice when you look at these two tables is that the groups are very comparable. And we did statistical analysis to make sure that the groups were similar across the board. And when you look down at the demographics here, you can see men and women equally divided, average age, similar across the board, different ethnic groups, similar across the board. So that was great when we divided up into the two groups. So our research questions, we talked earlier about learning and retention. Well, for the most part, the groups were the same. They both learned knowledge, which is important, right? You would hope that if someone played a video and watched it, they would learn some content. And then you would hope if they played 1Huddle, they would learn. Well, guess what? They learned the same. So that was good. But what was really interesting was that there were huge statistical differences between the amount of time, right? For 1Huddle, it was 14 minutes. For the video-based learning, it was 20 minutes. So you see a huge difference, and those are statistically significant, which is incredible for the research team. And then the other aspect was engagement, right? We'll get a little bit more detail of that in a minute, but 1Huddle was statistically significantly higher in engagement. Let's talk about that engagement now. So these were some of the questions we asked. We asked behavioral questions, right? Did you follow the instructions for the activity? We asked affective questions. Did you enjoy the video? Were you happy watching it? We watched cognitive engagement. Were you able to really engage with the material and be absorbed intellectually? And then we finally asked questions about cognitive engagement. How hard was it? How difficult? Was it a lot of mental taxing when you actually watched the video or did the 1Huddle game? So as you can see here, what was really showing and telling is that 1Huddle is significantly higher across the board in all these engagement, right? People were happier, they were more engaged, they had more intellectual absorption. And so that's really telling from a perspective of whether gamification or video-based learning. And as we mentioned already, they learned but they were doing it faster and they were more engaged in the content. So what we found, as I mentioned, 1Huddle significantly more engaging, but what we also found was that engagements predicted learning, right? And we did a regression and looked to see that those that were engaged were more apt to learn. And then those who were more engaged were significantly higher at learning in general. So a very cool, interesting, when you look at it from, okay, that's great. We talked about statistical significance, right? What does that mean? At the end of the day, what that means is that 1Huddle, while you gain the same amount of knowledge, you do it 45% faster than video-based learning. And when you're actually learning using 1Huddle, you're 12%, you enjoy it more than video-based learning. So you're doing it faster and you're enjoying it more. And at the end of the day, we know that companies really want to make sure they are being efficient, effective in their training, and that when they are being efficient, that their employees are happy about it. Therefore, they will continue to be motivated to continue to learn more. You know, we talked a little bit about, this was our first major study. What could we do next time? You know, as you noticed in the sample earlier, the population was very similar in age, around that 22 age range, more of the younger demographic, those entry level coming into the workplace. What we'd like to do in the future is do more of a generational gap, looking to see how it differs for individuals at all levels, you know, Gen Z, baby boomers, millennials, everyone in between. And then this was very much a controlled study. We controlled everything that we could. What we'd like to do is a field study to really get out there and look at potential clients or look at your current clients. We asked the students in the study to actually attempt 1Huddle at 80%. So looking to see if maybe controlling additional variables. And we told them, hey, you could go into 1Huddle, do it one time, learn the content, but we didn't let them go back and do play 1Huddle over and over again. So in the future, having them do it more and letting them know whether it's voluntary or mandatory. So overall, when you think about our research looking at the difference between 1Huddle and traditional video learning, when training, we've shown that it's scientifically established that learners will gain knowledge faster, be more engaged, be happier using 1Huddle over traditional video-based learning content. And it was really a pleasure doing this research project for you, Sam.
Thank you. One of the there's a lot of people on this call. One of the things we normally say, it's a lot of payroll in the room here. This was a pretty big group that did this. I think for most people who maybe don't know what goes into a research study of this effort level, could you maybe share a little background on you all, on your background and experience running formal research studies like this, and how this maybe differs from, you know, again, why we at 1Huddle came to you versus just, you know, trying to figure this out on our own. We thought would provide a lot more validity. It would also, you know, allow us to be vulnerable to learn things that maybe we assumed. So it'd be great to maybe just hear a little bit more about your perspective on what makes this different from maybe a typical internal company case study.
I'm going to actually let Dr. Wells introduce the team, because she will do the best job at making sure that she showcases everyone's strengths. Dr. Wells, introduce who we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Sam, for the question too. I think, yes, bringing great minds together is really important. And we are a very interdisciplinary group. You know, so in this room, we do have sport managers who focus on some are marketing, some organizational behavior. Dr. McCauley is in the HR, human resource, her background, and then Dr. Spector is in psychological, IO, industrial organizational psychology. And so it was really important so that we could gain, we could share the knowledge, right? We also brought in one of our graduate research assistants, you know, for some statistical background as a undergrad three major, right, Kevin? And so it was really important to bring us all together because we all have different viewpoints, you know, and the research that we've done. What else am I missing there, Dr. McCauley?
I just think that one of the key things is that when you have all these different groups come together is that we have the different perspectives. And so you kind of asked Sam about what would be different than the internal to this is that, we didn't have maybe the same motivation that you would as well. So I think that allowing you to have this more objective approach to your work and to finding out what was the good, the bad, you know what I mean, with this. And so, like you said, questioning those assumptions that you automatically have because it's your product. But when you have this group, this diverse group of people coming together, you can, ensure that you're not, kind of having those rose-colored glasses, if you will, when looking at your product. So, and I'm going to echo what was said. We really enjoyed this coming together and being able to work with you on this, and being able to have all the collective kind of perspectives come together to help with this project.
Was there anything, I guess, from one of the questions I got from my team when they looked at it, was there anything that you all expected to happen versus that, unexpected? What were the things that you expected and did happen? What were the things that were unexpected that popped out to you all?
I've done a lot of studies, hundreds, and one thing I've learned is never have high expectations, because a lot of times you design what you think is the best experiment and nothing works. You wind up with no significant results or something comes out opposite. So I was prepared for us to find literally nothing, or even that learning was worse with 1Huddle. But we were happily surprised, at least I was happily surprised, that the learning is the same, but it's more efficient and the engagement was higher. So engagement is less unexpected, because if you look at the gamification literature, it shows that gamification tends to increase motivation, particularly if it's well designed, and engagement. But the real surprise for me is how much more efficient it was, how you got the same learning with so much less time.
The other question I got from our team, which is really directed at all of you as professors and instructors and teachers and coaches, was there anything that you learned that's going to change how you teach in the classroom? Was there any takeaways that you all had that may spark something in a future class and change the way you teach?
I would love for Doreen, our award-winning teacher, to chime in on that one. Doreen?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Michelle. Absolutely, Sam. One of the things, so it was one of my classes that was used as part of this study, and the unsolicited feedback that we received outside of the study itself really changed my perspective on this. And so what it was that students really were engaged, but to the point that they wanted more, right? And so they wanted to see more of the curriculum done like this, because in my situation, a lot of my courses are online right now, and we have students that are working full time while they're trying to do this. So having the flexibility of being able to, get into their material while they were on their phone, taking a taxi, or they were on a train, or whatever the case may be, and for them to really kind of, like I said, unsolicited, to come and say, this was great, I really would like more of this. That was the big eye opener for me. So it kind of made me think, okay, I use a lot of video, so that more traditional video in mine. And I'm like, well, what can I do now to be able to make it more gamified? Because, if the learning is the same, because I'm with Dr. Spector on that one. If the learning is the same, and they're more engaged, they're happier doing it, why wouldn't we do it? And I think that absolutely there's a huge market for this in the academic area and in the higher education, where we have people that are doing this balance between working, getting their education, and trying to ensure that they are efficiently using their time. That it would be a big, big advantage to them.
Dr. Greenhall, do you also want to talk about how you've already gamified?
Yeah, so in teaching a business of esport class, I actually have gamified in such a rudimentary way that class, and doing this research project just really solidified that not only are we on the right track here, but that there's companies like 1Huddle that would have made my life so much easier if I would have just utilized you guys from the beginning than trying to, hodgepodge it together myself. So I plan on continuing to gamify my classes, and the responses that I received from students were very similar to the responses that Doreen received of just, this is so refreshing and different from what I'm used to, that there's a little bit of a learning curve. But once I get past that, I no longer have to just sit in front of my screen or sit in front of the instructor and hear them drone on. I can actually be engaged with my learning and kind of take ownership of my learning. I really, really like it. And that's what we were hearing from the students. And it was it's pretty refreshing.
How would you respond to the perspective, maybe there might be potential that someone would read the study and find or come out of it and say, well, this only talked about a specific training topic like implicit bias. So this maybe doesn't transfer or isn't as portable if I'm teaching a frontline worker how to follow an opening duty checklist, or might be tough to transfer to a new bartender learning how to make a cocktail, or it might not transfer to a new sales rep learning a call script. And that might be opportunity for future study, but how would you think about transferability of this beyond just this? In this case, we used a very specific set of content.
It would be a fair criticism of any study, of anything, not just gamification, that how do you know this one study would generalize to other content, other locations? And the answer is you can't really know unless you do more research, which is why people who do research are always saying we need more research. And so the way to answer that really is to say, well, these results show that at least in this one setting, it's more efficient, better engagement. There's other research out there, at least in terms of the engagement part, that supports that. So it's not like we found something that's different from what's been found before. But we really need to do more research. So if we do, we have a few of these studies with different kinds of content, then we have some confidence that, this generalizes pretty well. It might not work for every single topic, all content, but it seems to have broad applicability.
So I'll agree with that as well. The more research we have, the better we can be in making these types of generalizations about the accuracy of it. But I'm going to maybe suggest that if you were to look at the content that was used in this, so the unconscious bias, it was in the setting that the individuals were in, they were required to do this to be able to continue on with their job, because as being a student was their job. And so if you think of this as content that is required to be able to move on to the next step and then needing to learn that basic, if you will, is very similar to the environment they would be in the workplace, where they need to learn a script or learn an order process. And so I would say that, yes, it would be great for us to have more research, and we hope to be doing more research on this so we can see that generalization more. But at the same time, I think there's enough similarities for what the situation the individuals that were being studied are in to what your clients would be in, that we can with confidence say that this will be more engaging for them, and it will be more of an efficient way of learning for them.
One more point I'd like to add and echo what Dr. McCauley and Dr. Specker said is, implicit bias is sometimes an uncomfortable conversation to have in learning, and so I think for us to have the results that showed for something that might put people, in an uncomfortable position, is really telling. So yes, as Dr. Spector had said before, we need to test other contexts, other content, but I think it is really telling when we say this soft or more essential skill compared to a hard skill, what those differences would do. So Sammy just gave us another research study too.
Well, the research never ends. So as you know, last question for everybody, and I'm going to try to kind of zoom way out here. The impact of the COVID pandemic has been real on workers. It's been extra harsh on frontline workers who carry low wage jobs. And so much of the work we do at 1Huddle is targeting frontline workers that are not able to compete. What type of advice, as much as you'd be willing to, might you have for business leaders today at this moment, as they're thinking about, to the point that was made, efficiency was an important takeaway from this study. reskilling and upskilling faster than ever is going to be a reality for many businesses right now. Is there any advice that you might have for business leaders coming out of this work?
I'd like to echo what Dr. Macaulay said earlier, right? It's people want to do it mobily, right? That's a huge piece of this, right? That mobile, it's not only it's mobile, it's faster, it's more engaging, and that's going to help with future motivation, which Dr. Spector mentioned earlier. And so I think those keys into that, when you look at people in the world right now, they're on their phones. If you can add that training component into the mobile space and have them doing it on a device they're carrying around everywhere, it's going to make everybody better.
One thing that this type of training allows is just-in-time training, what's sometimes called micro-learning. So an employee is on the job and runs across something where they need to know something. They can very quickly get on their phone, find the module, go through the training, efficiently go through it in just a few minutes, gain the knowledge they need, and they're able to continue with their task. As opposed to pulling people off the job, sending them to training for a day, cramming in lots and lots of content, most of which they forget, and say, okay, we trained them on this. It's a better solution to train them when they need the specific skill, as opposed, and which they can do anywhere on their phones, on a computer, really anywhere when they need it, as opposed to, okay, we're going to train you in this and you may not use half of it for a year, at which time you forgot it and have to get retrained.
It's important to meet your employees where they are. You know, as this research has shown, it is efficient and it's enjoyable. And so we really need to think about the shifting generations in our workforce. You know, with this new generation coming in, where are they? You know, and as Dr. Harrell had said, they're on their phones, right? So let's meet them where they are.
And if I can just add something as well to that, just kind of on a broader scale, I think as organizational studies professionals, one of the key things is that if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your business, right? And that is such a key thing with any organization. And by doing something like having, you know, their training for them so they can be the best that they can be at their job, if they can feel confident that they have the resources they need right at their fingertips on that device that they always have with them anyway, I think you're really showing that you care. And that if you take care of them, then they're going to make sure that you take care of your business, or that they take care of your business for you. So I think as an overarching, you know, when we look at this, this is the next step in making sure that you can easily kind of show that appreciation or show that care, because you want to equip them to be as effective as possible at what they're doing for you and your organization. So I think that's a really important takeaway as well.
I would also add to those very astute points is this could also be looked at as a branding or recruitment strategy, where the image of the organization that uses 1Huddle, as opposed to a more traditional old school form of training or onboarding, is going to be viewed much more positively, especially in the eyes of the upcoming workforce, as an organization that kind of gets it, right? Like they're more cutting edge, they're more into understanding the employees' wants and needs, and doing all of the things that my colleagues have just talked about, you know, meeting them where they are, being mobile, all that sort of stuff. But it could also be utilized as a way to brand your organization as being a little bit more savvy compared to the competitors that are stuck in a more traditional model.
Kevin, as one of our youngest researchers and someone who represents incoming workforce, what are your thoughts on 1Huddle and the research that we did?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity to play around with 1Huddle, and also I was in the course that Sam very graciously allowed us to use 1Huddle to propose many business ideas during our IBA course this past summer. I was way more engaged with using 1Huddle than any sort of onboarding process that I've ever had before. I saw it as an excellent opportunity to also kind of tap into the education space, and I would love to kind of use 1Huddle to improve knowledge or retention faster when I'm doing my studies. And I saw this as a great opportunity to onboard it and be more engaged and productive within the organizations that I'd be working for. Then also I saw this as an excellent opportunity to, like we discussed, I'm learning content faster and I'm more engaged with what I'm doing, as opposed to just looking at a blank screen and wandering off. So I saw this as an excellent opportunity to continue with onboarding and then also tap into educational spaces as well.
Well, thanks everybody. That was great. That's the show.
There's not much more I can say after that. You learn, it's scientifically proven, 45% faster when you learn on 1Huddle. I want to thank the University of South Florida's research team on this project. You know, today more than ever, as we think about how we get workers back to work, how we onboard them quicker, how we upskill them better, studies like this are going to be extremely beneficial to organizations as they make better purchasing decisions around how they invest in technology to get their people up to speed and on the job, performing better. Now,